I mean, if you start a story with a character fighting giant crystal spiders, you're probably going to draw my attention to him pretty quickly. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to be talking about The Crystal Gunslinger by Oliver Laws, and I'm happy I got the name right because for some reason I just could not remember his last name every time I talked about this book when I was reading it. But this was sent to me by the author as a review copy, and one that I had been meaning to get to for quite some time because I've been so behind on review copies, so finally was able to get to it. And as I said in the introduction, this does start out, we see in the prologue how our character Cyrus gets his crystal rifle, and then we start off seeing with him. He's years later and is fighting off these giant crystal spiders trying to protect a caravan, and was a really interesting way to start the book. And the part that really pulled me in here is the world, because and I've talked about this before as well. Interesting world building and unique stuff there is a really good way to pull me in, and is something that I prioritize higher than I think a lot of readers do. But the basically here is some sort of kind of like crystal meteor came and it hit and it landed and it turned this whole region into what's called the Scorch. And it's like a desert, but with this star sand, which is this kind of like much worse than normal sand of these like sharp like pieces of rock and everything. And it also there's a lot of crystals that can be mined there, but it also had this impact on creatures there. So you have all of these like gigantic creatures, like spiders and scorpions, and there are birds, there are other things too, like dogs and wolves, and there are these crystal creatures that were impacted basically by this some sort of magical crystal thing that happened. And it's this really dangerous place, and it's bordered by multiple countries, but because of the fact that you can mine for gems there very easily, it's still a place that people live. And so it's kind of set up as like being like the West, where people come out and they have settlements and you have prospectors going and looking and that sort of thing. And that really pulled me in. I found really interesting. And then the main character Cyrus as a crystal gunslinger, it's because he's one of the few people who have a gun with the barrel that's made of crystal and can shoot specialized crystal bullets basically as well, that make it easier to fight these creatures. But then there's also, you have guns, but it's the setup that the like kind of protection guard guild are called the Rooks, and they usually are just using like swords, spears, halberds, things like that are edged with crystal, because of the fact that that's usually more practical and easier to train people to do that. So that's kind of our setup here. So right off the bat, really interesting world, something I was super interested in. My problem came because, and I've had this happen recently actually with a few things. It's a book where it starts off with a really cool concept. I'm pulled in by that in the world building, but then it switches to more of a fast-paced, character-focused type of story, which a lot of people really enjoy. I had this like with Dark Star Dragon. Really interesting concept, but then we were focusing more on the characters, and I'm like, no, I want to know more about this world. I want more world building. And that's kind of what I ran into here. So this is fast-paced. There's a lot of action, and there's a lot of cool stuff, and there is a lot of great world building in there, especially at the beginning, and then we get a bit more at the end. But a lot of the middle, I just found myself slightly less into it because I wanted something different, and that really comes to a kind of style thing. So I think if you think that core premise sounds interesting, especially if you like shorter, fast-paced, character-focused stories, this is a good one to check out, because that's definitely more so where this is going for. So the middle drug on a bit for me because of that. I will say, though, I thought I was going to end up being about a 3-star, and then it ended up going more to like a 3.5, rounding up to 4, because as I got closer to the end, there was a really great twist that brought it up for me, and I quite enjoyed what that is. I'm not going to say what it was here because I'm trying to keep this most spoiler-free here, but the twist kind of brought it up to me, and I'm like, okay, I like the way that was done, and it set up for some really interesting things and shifts from what you were expecting in the end, and so that really brought it up for me, and I really enjoyed this one too. There's always more time for world building later in the series as well, so hopefully we'll get more, because I'm really curious to see where this one goes still as well. Now, the other thing I want to know is this is multi-first-person POVs, which is also, I think, personally a style that I'm not usually a huge fan of. It can work, and I do very much understand why it was done, because for this type of story, it makes sense with the type of character-focused story he's trying to tell here, the author, to do it this way. I feel like I probably would have preferred third person, though, and that's often something I do. But the thing I'll note is it was kind of confusing, especially early on when we were switching POVs, because you're not really necessarily told. And I didn't realize this was multi-POV until the prologue was a different POV first person, but then it was focusing on the main character, Cyrus. But there are several other POVs that we see here and there. And it just sort of switches, and I'm like, is this the same character? And I was really confused for a moment. It does later on at least start telling you when it is Cyrus and like kind of which character, so that you can see it a little bit. But definitely, I think I would have liked it to be a little bit clearer, just because it was a little confusing at first. But with that type of story, I think it worked. I typically prefer third person, and I think just multi-POV, there are a lot of challenges with that to make that work. And I think for the most part, it worked here as well. And like I said, with some of the characters and the way that they were being developed, having it be first person for other characters as well, I think made sense. So that was more of a personal preference thing as well, like I said. So I've had, this joins the list of lately some stuff I've read that's fast-paced, and has cool stuff going on, but it's just like me, I want more of that world building, and I would have liked a little bit more of that. And I think with this one too, spending a little bit more time exploring the world before we get into the main plot, I feel like would have worked better for me. But it's always funny to say that, because I guarantee if it was written the way that I would have liked this to be written, where we start off the same, but then we spend more time just our main character traveling around, we're seeing more of this world before we get into like the main plot line, then there'd be people who'd be like, oh my gosh, the main plot line took way too long to get started. And so it's kind of one of those things where you might react very differently to that. If you're a person, like I said, if you like the fast pace, getting into it, focusing on characters, and moving really quickly, this really does that. I'm okay with slower starts if I get to explore a world more, and so that's kind of more so what I was looking for is kind of where I felt there. So this was enjoyable, one that I will definitely check out, and like I said, one that was losing me a little bit, just because I wasn't, the multi-POVs in the first person and kind of some of the interactions with the characters, I was just like, because I wasn't super connecting with the story there, but some stuff that happens later on, a twist that happened and then kind of changed your perspective of some things, I think was really, really interesting and brought it up for me. And then just toward the end anyway, there's some big stuff being set up for what's going to be coming that pulled me in as well here. And that's not to say like the characters are bad or anything like that, but it's one of those things too where this is a book that feels sort of YA-ish to me, and it's not like doing a bunch of YA tropes or anything with it. It feels like it's one of those kind of borderline books, kind of like a lot of what Sanderson does, where it feels sort of YA, sort of adult, and that comes down, I think, to character interactions for me a lot is where I tend to feel that. So I got kind of that feel as well. To an extent, and I've had a few like that lately that border. So I'm not saying like, this is YA or this is 100% adult. It's kind of in the middle, I would say, is the feel that I got from this. It's not overly dark by any means, but it's not like overly light either. It's in the middle. It's got some action. It's got some good things going on. I didn't super connect with the characters, and I just wanted more interesting world things and plot things, and then I got them. So it's still something that I ended up enjoying. Overall. Those really, though, are my thoughts on The Crystal Gunslinger by Oliver Laws. Let me know if you've read this one, or if it's one that you're definitely going to be checking out, because like me, you heard Crystal Spiders and then just didn't really care at that point and were pulled in. Because I started reading this, I'm like, yes! I am a sucker for like cool creatures and stuff, especially like there aren't any dinosaurs, but dinosaurs are another thing that tend to get my attention very quickly. But the cool creature stuff like that is just something I'm a fan of. So it was really interesting to see how that worked and to pull me in. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I always love to hear from you. Otherwise, make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun. We'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.